The conversation started the same way it always did. Mom sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, scrolling through Pinterest boards while I unloaded groceries I'd bought for the family dinner I was expected to cook. "Sarah, come here," she called without looking up. "I need to talk to you about my birthday." Her 60th was still 4 months away, but I knew this tone. This was the tone that meant my next few months were about to disappear into someone else's celebration. I set down the grocery bags and walked over. "It's a milestone birthday," she continued, finally looking at me. "I want something special. Really special. I'm thinking 200 people, maybe 250. The whole family, all my friends from work, the neighbors, people from church. Everyone who matters." I pulled out a chair and sat down, already feeling the familiar weight settling on my shoulders. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, that's what I need you to figure out." She turned the laptop toward me. The screen showed an elaborate party setup with chandeliers, formal place settings, and a 3-tier cake. Something like this. Elegant. Sophisticated. I want people to remember this party for years. I scrolled through the images. Each one showed setups that would cost thousands of dollars and require months of coordination. "Mom, this looks like it would need a professional event planner." She waved her hand dismissively. "Why would I pay someone when you're so good at this? Remember cousin Lisa's wedding? And Dad's retirement party? Everyone said those were the best events they'd ever been to. Those events that had consumed my entire summer. The wedding where I'd spent 3 weeks addressing invitations by hand because Lisa wanted that personal touch. The retirement party where I'd coordinated with 17 different vendors while working my full-time job. Besides," Mom continued, "you don't have anything else going on. No husband, no kids. This gives you something meaningful to focus on." The familiar sting hit right on target. At 34, I was constantly reminded of what I didn't have rather than what I'd accomplished. My master's degree in project management meant nothing. My promotion to senior coordinator at the nonprofit meant nothing. The fact that I'd just signed up for a pottery class and was learning French meant nothing. What mattered was that I was available. Always available. "I'll need to think about the budget," I said carefully. "Oh, don't worry about that. We'll figure it out. You're so creative, I'm sure you'll find ways to make it work without spending too much." Translation. She wanted the expensive look with a minimal budget, and it would be my job to perform miracles. I'd learned over the years that "we'll figure it out" meant I'd be quietly subsidizing family events with my own money, then never getting reimbursed. "When do you need an answer?" "Well, I already told everyone at book club that you were planning it. They're so excited to see what you come up with this time." She smiled, that particular smile that meant the decision had been made without me, and my consent was just a formality. I nodded slowly. "Hey, let me look into some options." That night I sat in my apartment with a legal pad, making lists like I always did. Potential venues. Catering options. Entertainment possibilities. Guest list management. Timeline for invitations. Decoration themes. But this time I made another list on a separate piece of paper. A list I'd never made before. Things I wanted to do instead. The French class I'd been excited about. The pottery studio where I'd signed up for weekend workshops. The hiking group I'd been meaning to join. The trip to Europe I'd been dreaming about for 3 years but never took because there was always a family event to plan. I stared at both lists. On the left, 4 months of my life disappearing into someone else's celebration. On the right, 4 months of my life belonging to me. For the first time in my adult life, I picked up my phone and called my therapist outside of our scheduled session. "Dr. Martinez? It's Sarah. I know it's late, but I need to ask you something." "Of course. What's going on?" "If someone asks you to do something and you say yes but then you change your mind and don't do it, is that lying?" There was a pause. "Can you tell me more about the context?" I explained the birthday party situation. The expectation. The assumption. The way my agreement had been taken for granted before I'd even given it. "Sarah," Dr. Martinez said gently, "what would happen if you said no?" "I can't say no. It's too late." She already told people. But what would actually happen? I sat with that question for a long time. What would actually happen? Mom would be angry. The family would be disappointed. There would be drama and guilt trips and accusations. But what would actually happen to me? "I think," I said slowly, "I would be free." The next morning I started planning 2 different things simultaneously. On my work computer, I researched venues and caterers, sending emails and requesting quotes like the dutiful daughter everyone expected me to be. On my personal laptop, I researched flights to Paris. The party planning felt like sleepwalking through a familiar nightmare. Call 17 venues, find 2 that might work. Get quotes from 8 caterers, negotiate with 3. Research live music options, entertainment, photographers, florists. Create spreadsheets for guest lists, dietary restrictions, seating arrangements. The Paris planning felt like waking up for the first time in years. Book a small hotel in the 6th arrondissement. Research museums and cafes. Sign up for a cooking class. Find a bookstore that offered English language events. For 3.5 months I lived in parallel universes. During family dinners I updated everyone on the party preparations. The venue is almost confirmed, I'd say. The catering is coming together. I'm working on the entertainment. All technically true. I was working on these things. I was making calls and sending emails and creating elaborate plans. I just wasn't finalizing anything. Meanwhile, my real life was taking shape in secret. I'd submitted the time-off request at work, citing family obligations. I'd arranged for my neighbor to water my plants. I'd bought a beautiful leather journal to document my trip. The closest I came to confessing was during a session with Dr. Martinez 3 weeks before the party. I keep thinking I should tell them, I said. Give them time to find someone else to plan it. What's stopping you? They'll be so angry. They'll say I'm selfish and irresponsible. Are you being selfish? I thought about it. I'm being self-preserving. There's a difference. What's the difference? Selfish would be if I was hurting them for my own gain. Self-preserving is protecting myself from being hurt by them. Dr. Martinez nodded. And how are you being hurt? That was the question that unlocked everything. How was I being hurt? Let me count the ways. I was being hurt by the assumption that my time had no value. By the expectation that I would sacrifice my own interests for everyone else's convenience. By the casual dismissal of my own goals and dreams. By the way my worth was measured entirely by my usefulness to others. I was being hurt by 20 years of being the family's unpaid event coordinator, never getting appreciation, only criticism if something went wrong. By the way my own birthday was forgotten year after year while I planned elaborate celebrations for everyone else. I was being hurt by the subtle and not so subtle messages that my life was less important because I didn't have the right kind of family structure. That my career accomplishments were meaningless because they didn't fit the family's definition of success. I'm being erased, I told Dr. Martinez. Slowly, event by event, expectation by expectation. I'm disappearing into what everyone else needs me to be. 2 weeks before the party, Mom called with updates. I ran into Margaret at the grocery store, she said excitedly. She's so looking forward to the party. She said her daughter is coming in from Seattle specifically for it. And you know how hard it is to get Amanda to travel. My stomach twisted. People were making travel plans. Taking time off work. Arranging babysitters. I also confirmed with the church ladies, Mom continued. All 12 of them are coming. They're so curious to see what you've planned this time. Remember how impressed they were with the centerpieces at Cousin Rachel's shower? I remembered. I'd spent 3 weekends handcrafting those centerpieces, staying up until 2 a.m. the night before the shower to finish them. And your brother called. He and Jenny are driving down from Portland. They're making a whole weekend of it. More people. More travel plans. More expectations. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and practiced different versions of the conversation I needed to have. Mom, I need to tell you something about the party. Mom, there's been a change of plans. Mom, I can't do this anymore. But every version ended the same way in my imagination. Tears. Accusations. Guilt. The whole family mobilizing to make me understand how selfish and irresponsible I was being. So I didn't have the conversation. Instead, I confirmed my flight to Paris for the morning of the party. The last week was surreal. Everyone was talking about the party with increasing excitement. Mom kept calling with last-minute guest additions. Oh, and the Johnsons are coming now. I ran into them at the bank and couldn't not invite them. My brother texted updates about their travel plans. We're leaving Portland at 8 a.m. Saturday. Should be there by 2. Can't wait to see what you've put together this time, sis. Cousins were posting on social media about getting outfits ready for Aunt Linda's big celebration. Friends of the family were commenting about how they'd cleared their Saturday evening specifically for this party. And I was printing my boarding pass. Friday night I packed a single suitcase. Just enough clothes for a week in Paris. The journal I'd bought. A small gift I'd picked up for myself. A silver bracelet I'd been admiring for months but never bought because I should save money for the family. I set 3 alarms for 4 a.m. I wrote a letter that I planned to leave on my kitchen counter, but when I tried to write it, no words came. How do you explain 20 years of invisible labor? How do you quantify the cost of always being available, always being accommodating, always being the one who sacrifices? In the end, I wrote just 4 lines. I hope you all understand someday that my time has value too. I hope you realize that asking is different from assuming. I hope you remember this feeling the next time you expect someone to give up their life for your convenience. I'm learning to say no. Saturday morning, my phone started ringing at 5:15 a.m. while I was in the Uber to the airport. Mom's ringtone. I let it go to voicemail. By the time I was through security, I had 6 missed calls and 12 text messages. I put my phone on airplane mode without reading them. The flight to Paris was the most peaceful 7 hours of my life. No one needed anything from me. No one expected me to solve their problems or coordinate their logistics or anticipate their needs. I read a book. I journaled. I watched clouds through the tiny window and thought about nothing except the fact that somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, I was finally doing something just for me. I landed in Paris at 7 p.m. local time, which meant it was 11 a.m. in my hometown. The party was scheduled to start at 6 p.m. When I turned my phone back on, I had 43 missed calls and 67 text messages. I read them while sitting in a small cafe near my hotel, drinking wine and eating cheese that I'd ordered in my imperfect but enthusiastic French. The messages followed a predictable pattern. First came confusion. Where are you? The venue says they don't have any reservation under our name. Then anger. Sarah, this isn't funny. 200 people are expecting a party tonight. Then panic. We can't reach the caterer. None of the vendors have heard from you. What is going on? Then desperation. Please call back. We can figure this out together. Just tell us where everything is. Finally hurt. How could you do this to Mom? To all of us? We trusted you. I ordered another glass of wine and crafted a single group text to send to my entire family. I'm safe and I'm sorry for the confusion. I realize that I've been planning everyone else's life but not my own. I need some time to figure out what I want instead of what everyone expects from me. I'll call when I'm ready. Then I turned my phone off completely. For the next 5 days I wandered through Paris like someone learning to walk again. I spent hours in the Louvre not because I had to cover everything, but because I wanted to sit with the paintings that spoke to me. I took a cooking class where I was terrible at making croissants but excellent at laughing about it. I wrote in my journal in small cafes where no one knew me or expected anything from me. On my last day I sat by the Seine and finally turned my phone back on. 89 new messages. Most of them were variations on themes I'd expected. Anger about the embarrassment. Guilt about Mom's ruined birthday. Accusations of selfishness and irresponsibility. But buried in the middle was a message from my cousin Emma that made me stop scrolling. Hey Sarah. I know everyone's mad, but I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about what you said. About asking versus assuming. I realized I've been doing that to my roommate for months, just expecting her to clean up after me because she's good at that stuff. I apologized to her yesterday. I hope you're okay wherever you are. And another one from my brother's girlfriend Jenny. I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but watching everyone scramble to throw together a last-minute celebration made me realize how much work you usually do that none of us see. I'm sorry we took that for granted. And surprisingly, one from Dr. Martinez, who I'd given permission to contact me in emergencies. Your mother called my office. I couldn't discuss your therapy, but I told her that sometimes people need to take dramatic action to be heard. She asked me to tell you that she's proud of you for taking care of yourself. She said she's ready to listen when you're ready to talk. On the plane home I wrote a different letter. Not an apology but an explanation. A careful outline of what I was willing to do going forward and what I wasn't. A list of my own goals and interests that I would no longer sacrifice for family obligations. And a request for something I'd never asked for before. Consideration. When I landed, my brother was waiting at the airport. Not to yell at me as I'd expected but to drive me home. Jenny made me realize some things. he said as we pulled out of the parking garage. About how much you do for all of us. And how little we do for you. I just needed them to see that my time has value too, I said. We see it now, he said. Well, most of us do. Mom's still pretty hurt, but she's starting to understand. 2 weeks later, we had the family meeting I'd been dreading. But instead of the confrontation I'd expected, it turned into something I'd never experienced before. A conversation where my perspective mattered. Mom did cry. She talked about feeling embarrassed and hurt. But she also apologized for assuming I would always be available, for never asking what I wanted, for measuring my worth by my usefulness to others. I want to plan my own 61st birthday, she said finally. Will you teach me how? My brother and sister-in-law offered to take turns hosting holidays. My cousin Emma volunteered to coordinate the next family reunion. For the first time in 20 years, the family labor was being distributed instead of dumped entirely on me. And I signed up for the advanced French class. 6 months later, I planned Mom's 61st birthday party. But this time it was because I chose to, not because it was expected. She paid for everything up front. She asked what I wanted to do instead of telling me what she needed done. She thanked me not just afterward but throughout the process. The party was lovely. Smaller than her 60th would have been, but more meaningful. 40 people who really mattered to her, gathering in our backyard for a simple but elegant celebration. And afterward, when people asked Mom who'd planned such a beautiful party, she said something she'd never said before. My daughter Sarah planned it. She's incredibly talented at this, and I'm grateful she chose to share that talent with us. The difference between being assigned and being chosen, it turns out, is the difference between resentment and love. Now when family members need help with events, they ask instead of assume. They offer to pay instead of expecting free labor. They thank me instead of criticizing what could have been better. And sometimes I say no. Not out of anger or spite but out of self-respect. Because I learned in Paris that my time belongs to me first and I can choose how to share it. The pottery class is going well. I'm terrible at it, but I love the feeling of creating something that exists only because I want it to exist. Next month, I'm taking a weekend trip to wine country with 2 friends from the hiking group I finally joined. And I'm planning my own 35th birthday party. Just for me. With exactly the people I want to celebrate with, doing exactly what I want to do. For the first time in my life, I'm excited about my own birthday instead of dreading the next family obligation. Turns out, the best gift I ever gave myself was learning that my life belongs to me.
Get your things and leave. This house is for family only. Margaret shouted as she threw my bag onto the sand. I don't care what my son says. You're just his wife, not real family. My name is Olivia. I'm 34, and my mother-in-law was kicking me out of our beach house while my husband James was away for work. For 8 years, this had been our summer home, a place full of happy memories with James and our daughter, Emma. Margaret stood on the deck, angry and red-faced. Behind her, my sister-in-law, Amanda, smirked. She was already imagining how she would turn my art studio into a playroom for her kids. Did you hear me? Margaret snapped. Pack up and go. Amanda's kids need the space. They're real family. I calmly picked up my bag, brushing off the sand. Of course, Margaret, I understand. She frowned, expecting me to argue or cry. Well, good, she muttered, disappointed. James will agree. Family comes first. Oh, I'm sure he will, I said with a small smile as I walked inside to pack. I could hear Margaret and Amanda talking in the kitchen. That awful blue paint in the master bedroom. Gone? Margaret said. And that silly art studio? It'll be a perfect playroom. As I packed, I thought about James's grandfather, Robert. He had built this house with his own hands and always welcomed me, even when Margaret didn't. You're the daughter I always wanted, Robert had told me before he passed away. Promise me you'll keep this house full of love. Real family, not just blood. I had promised him, and he had done something to make sure I could. Margaret appeared in the doorway. I called a car for you, she said. Amanda's family will be here soon. I picked up my bag and smiled. Just one thing before I go. I should call the security company. Margaret frowned. Security? Why? To update the codes. Can't have unauthorized people in a house. Amanda stepped forward. This is our family home. I looked at them and said, actually, it's mine. Robert left it to me. Silence. Margaret's face turned pale. Amanda's mouth hung open. You're lying, Margaret whispered. I pulled a paper from my purse. Want to see the deed? Robert made sure it was official. Margaret grabbed it with shaking hands. As she read the final paragraph, her eyes widened. Robert had left the house to me with a clear note. This home is for real family, not just blood. This can't be legal, Amanda said weakly. Oh, it's very legal, I replied. In fact, since you care so much about unauthorized people, I should ask you both to leave. I'll be changing the locks. Margaret gasped. You can't do this. We've spent 40 summers here. I smiled. Actually, I can. But unlike you, I believe family is about love, not just blood. So here's the deal. You both apologize sincerely. Then we'll sit down and make a fair schedule for using the house. One that includes everyone. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Margaret? That awful blue paint in the master bedroom. It's staying. Robert picked it himself. The aftermath of my revelation rippled through the family like a tidal wave. Margaret and Amanda left that evening, slamming doors and making dire threats about lawyers and family betrayal. I spent that night alone in the beach house, sitting on the deck where Robert and I used to share our morning coffee, remembering his words about standing my ground. James called the next morning, his voice tight with concern. Mom called me in hysterics. Something about you kicking them out of the beach house? I took a deep breath, watching the waves roll in. Your mother tried to throw me out first, claiming the house was for blood relatives only. I simply showed her the deed Robert left me. There was a long pause. Grandpa Rob left you the house. His tone was surprise, but not angry. When? Last year, before he passed. He wanted to make sure it stayed a place for the whole family, not just the ones your mother approves of. I explained everything. Margaret's ambush, Amanda's smug plans for my art studio, their attempts to erase every trace of my presence in the house. James let out a slow breath. I'm sorry, Liv. I should have seen this coming. Mom's always been difficult with you. Difficult is putting it mildly, I said, thinking of 8 years of subtle jabs and not-so-subtle exclusions. But I'm not going to stoop to her level. The house stays open to everyone, as long as they can behave like actual family. I'm coming home, he decided. This needs to be handled in person. While waiting for James to arrive, I received a barrage of texts from extended family members. Some, like James's cousin Michael, were supportive. About time someone stood up to Aunt Margaret. Others, clearly influenced by Margaret's version of events, were less kind. I spent the day going through old photos Robert had kept in his study. There were pictures of James as a child, building sandcastles with his grandfather, photos of family barbecues and fishing trips, and newer ones, Emma's first steps on the beach, Robert teaching her to use his old telescope, my art shows in the garden. The sound of cars pulling up broke through my reminiscing. Looking out the window, I saw James's car, followed by Margaret's luxury SUV, Showtime. The family meeting that followed was exactly as tense as I'd expected. We gathered in the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the ocean, a view Margaret had always claimed was wasted on my amateur paintings. This is ridiculous, Margaret started, her voice shrill. Robert wasn't in his right mind when he made these changes. We'll contest it. Actually, James interrupted. I called his lawyer this morning. Everything's ironclad. Dad witnessed the signing himself. Margaret turned to her husband, Thomas, who had been suspiciously quiet until now. You knew about this? Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Rob talked to me about it. Said he wanted to make sure the house stayed what it was meant to be, a place for family to come together, not drift apart. We are together. Amanda protested. We're blood. Blood isn't everything, I said quietly. Family is about love, support, acceptance. Robert understood that. He saw how you both treated me, how you tried to exclude me, how you made Emma feel less special than Amanda's kids because she's not a peer steward. James's head snapped up. What? Oh, you didn't know? I turned to my husband. Last Christmas, your mother told Emma she couldn't participate in the family gift exchange because she wasn't really a steward since I'm not from the right bloodline. The room fell silent. James looked at his mother in horror. Tell me that's not true. Margaret's face flushed. I was just trying to maintain family traditions. By hurting my daughter. James's voice was dangerously quiet. By making my wife feel unwelcome in her own family. She's not family. Margaret burst out. She's just some girl you married instead of Catherine Williams like we planned. Finally, the truth came out. This had never been about family traditions or bloodlines. It was about control, about Margaret's thwarted plans for her son's life. Enough. James stood up. Mom, Amanda, you both have a choice to make. Either you accept that Olivia is my wife, Emma is my daughter, and this house belongs to all of us, or you don't visit at all. Your call. Amanda started crying, a tactic that had always worked on her brother before. But James wasn't backing down. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. Robert knew what he was doing, he said firmly, and I support his decision completely. Margaret stood up, smoothing her expensive slacks with trembling hands. Well, I can see where this is going. Come on, Amanda. We know when we're not wanted. That's the thing, Margaret, I said, stopping her before she could storm out. You are wanted. Your family. But family means accepting all of us, not just the ones who fit your ideal image. She paused at the door, her back rigid. For a moment, I thought I saw her shoulders slump, just slightly. But then she straightened up and walked out, Amanda trailing behind her. Thomas lingered, looking torn. She'll come around, he said finally. She just needs time. Rob, he would be proud of you, Olivia. Both of you. As the sound of cars fading into the distance filled the air, James and I stood on the deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. I'm sorry, he said softly. I should have protected you and Emma better. I leaned into his side. We're protecting each other now. That's what real family does. 3 months passed and summer was in full swing. Emma had returned from camp, ecstatic to find that not only were we still at the beach house, but her art room had been expanded. James and I had converted one of the unused bedrooms into a proper studio space for both of us, filling it with easels, canvases, and the sound of laughter. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the weight of years of judgment had finally lifted. Without Margaret's constant criticism, we were free to make the place truly our own while honoring Robert's memory. We heard through Thomas that Margaret and Amanda were spending the summer at an exclusive resort, making sure everyone in their social circle knew they were too good for the old family beach house. But their absence had an unexpected effect. Other family members who had stayed away over the years began to return. James's cousin Michael brought his kids for a weekend, something Margaret had always discouraged because his wife was too common. His sister Lucy, who'd been practically disowned for becoming a public school teacher instead of a lawyer, came with her girlfriend. The house was alive with the kind of genuine warmth Robert had always wanted. One evening, as I was setting up for our weekly family barbecue, a tradition I'd started to bring everyone together, I found Emma sitting in Robert's old study, looking at photographs. Great-Grandpa Rob was really smart, wasn't he? She said, touching a picture of him teaching her about constellations. He was, I agreed, sitting beside her. He knew what really mattered. Is Grandma Margaret ever coming back? Emma asked quietly. Amanda's kids still won't talk to me at school. I pulled her close. Sometimes people need time to learn important lessons. Your great-grandpa believed everyone could change if given the chance to understand what family really means. As if on cue, we heard a car pulling up outside. Through the window, I saw a familiar luxury SUV. Margaret stepped out, alone, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. James met her at the door. I could see them talking on the porch, his posture gradually relaxing. When they came inside, Margaret's eyes were red. Olivia, she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Could we talk? In Robert's study, Margaret looked around at the photos, pausing at one of him with Emma and me, all of us covered in paint after an afternoon of art lessons. He always said you reminded him of my mother, she said softly. She was an artist too. I thought he was criticizing my choice to give up painting for a more suitable career. It wasn't criticism, I replied. It was recognition. Margaret nodded, wiping her eyes. I've been talking with Thomas. And my therapist. She almost smiled at my surprised look. I'm trying to understand why I've been so resistant to accepting you. And Emma, the truth is, I've spent my whole life trying to be what I thought a steward should be. I forgot how to just be family. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small package. I found this in my attic. It's my mother's old sketchbook. I thought maybe Emma might like to see her great-grandmother's art. It was a peace offering, small but significant. She'd love that, I said. We're having a barbecue tonight. Would you like to stay? That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, our expanded family gathered on the deck. Margaret sat with Emma, showing her old sketches and for the first time, really seeing her granddaughter. Amanda called, tentatively asking if she and her kids could visit next weekend. Thomas caught my eye and smiled, raising his glass slightly. Above us, stars began to appear, the same stars Robert used to name for Emma. I could almost hear his voice. Family isn't about being perfect, kitten. It's about being together. The beach house had become what it was always meant to be, not a symbol of status or bloodline, but a home where family, in all its imperfect, beautiful forms, could grow together. As I watched Margaret genuinely laugh at one of James's jokes, I realized that sometimes the greatest act of family love isn't holding on to anger, but opening the door to change. Robert had known that all along. That's why he left the house to me, not to exclude, but to include, to build bridges instead of walls. In the end, it wasn't about ownership at all. It was about creating a place where everyone could belong, where blood relatives only transformed into all are welcome. That was Robert's true legacy, and we were finally living it. My sister-in-law, Amanda's cheerful voice rang from my phone as I scrolled through her latest Instagram post. My hands shook with anger as I watched her video. She made it look like she had been by my son Oliver's hospital bed the whole time, watching over him with love. The truth? She had only been there for 15 minutes, just enough to take pictures and videos, while I had spent the last 3 days sleeping in an uncomfortable hospital chair, exhausted and worried sick. My name is Sophie Turner, and at 34 years old, I'm watching Amanda use my 8-year-old son's severe asthma attack to gain fame on social media. Being an aunt means being there through the hardest times. Amanda's voice played over the video as she posed next to Oliver's nebulizer. Little warrior Oliver is fighting so hard, and Auntie Amanda won't leave his side. Hashtag prayers for Oliver, hashtag family first, hashtag aunt life. I turned off the video, my stomach twisting. She had posted it an hour ago, but she hadn't even been at the hospital since yesterday. Meanwhile, I hadn't left Oliver's side once. My clothes were wrinkled, my hair was a mess, and I had dark circles under my eyes from no sleep. A text from my husband, Mark, popped up. Have you seen Amanda's latest post? Mom is sharing it everywhere, saying what an amazing aunt she is. Of course she was. My mother-in-law, Diana, had always favored Amanda. Now, every time Amanda posted about Oliver, Diana would spread it around, praising her dedication. I typed back yes. I didn't trust myself to say more. Mark was at home with our younger daughter, Emma, trying to keep things normal for her while I stayed with Oliver. He knew how I felt about Amanda's social media act, but he always tried to keep the peace. Your sister's post has over 50,000 likes, I texted after a moment. Too bad none of those people can help her actually show up so I can take a shower. Oliver stirred in his bed, his voice weak. Mom. I put my phone down right away and rushed to his side. I'm here, baby. Do you need anything? He shook his head slightly, his blue eyes looking tired but better than before. The doctors said he was improving, but we still had to be careful. My phone buzzed again. Amanda was now doing a live video from her perfectly decorated home office, tears in her eyes. I've barely slept, she sniffled, her makeup still perfect. But that's what family does, right? We sacrifice everything for the ones we love. The comments poured in. You're such an amazing aunt. You're literally an angel. Oliver is lucky to have you. I wanted to scream. While Amanda was gaining followers, I was actually taking care of Oliver. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, watching his oxygen levels, holding my breath every time he struggled to breathe. That was real. And the worst part, Amanda was using my son's illness to grow her online following. In just 3 days, she had gone from 5,000 followers to over 75,000. Every post about Oliver made her more famous. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Dr. Martinez, Oliver's doctor. How's our patient? She asked, checking his chart. Better, I said, running my fingers through Oliver's curls. His breathing is easier today. Dr. Martinez nodded. That's good. Has anyone come to give you a break? You look exhausted. I thought about Amanda's live stream still happening. No, I said quietly, it's just me. She gave me a kind look. Try to rest when you can. Oliver needs you to be healthy too. After she left, I checked my phone again. Amanda had already posted new pictures, old baby photos of her with Oliver, carefully edited to look perfect. The strongest little warrior I know, she had written. Auntie's heart is breaking, but I won't leave his side. Follow for more updates on our journey. Hashtag family over everything. Hashtag Auntie Life. Hashtag Prayer Warrior. Our journey. I looked at my sleeping son, then at my reflection in the window. Messy hair, tired face, and a coffee-stained shirt. This wasn't a journey. It wasn't content. This was my child fighting to breathe, while Amanda turned his illness into her social media brand. Then another text from my mother-in-law. Amanda is doing such a great job keeping everyone updated. You should thank her for taking this burden off your shoulders. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I opened my laptop and started typing. It was time to show the world what real family looked like, and it had nothing to do with likes, shares, or follower counts. I stared at my laptop screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Oliver's heart monitor beeped steadily in the background, and the hospital room's bright lights cast sharp shadows. But I could see clearly now. I knew what I had to do. I pulled up Amanda's posts from the past 3 days, 15 staged photos, 7 emotional videos, 3 dramatic live streams, all making her look like a devoted aunt. Then, I opened my phone's camera roll. My photos were different. No filters, no perfect angles, just real moments. Oliver's 2 breathing treatments, his tired but brave smiles, the nurses helping him. Most importantly, I had the hospital's visitor log. It showed the truth. Amanda had spent just 45 minutes at the hospital in 3 days, only long enough for her social media posts. Sophie? Oliver's weak voice broke my thoughts. Is Aunt Amanda really helping me get better? My heart clenched. He had seen her posts. She had made sure of that. No, sweetheart, I said gently, sitting beside him. You're getting better because you're strong. And because of the doctors, the nurses, and the people who are really here with you. He nodded, squeezing my hand. I just thought, maybe she cared more now. That was it. My decision was made. I opened my social media account and typed, a story about real family, no filters, no music, just the truth. First, I posted the visitor log, proving Amanda's short visits. Then, my real photos, ones that showed the hard moments, the sleepless nights, the reality of caring for a sick child. Real family, I wrote, doesn't need an audience. Real family shows up in the hard moments, not just the photogenic ones. I added screenshots of Amanda's monetized posts, her sponsorship deals, and the merchandise line she had launched using Oliver's illness. My hands shook as I hit post, but I felt lighter. The reaction was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop. People who had believed Amanda's devoted aunt act were shocked. They started questioning her. Did you think this through? Mark texted. You know how Mom will react. As if on cue, my mother-in-law called. I let it go to voicemail. I already knew she would tell me I was being unfair, that Amanda was just trying to help. But I wasn't the one dividing the family. Amanda had done that when she used my son's illness for attention. Then, a nurse peeked into the room. Mrs. Turner, there's someone here insisting on seeing Oliver. Should I? Before she could finish, Amanda stormed in, her face red with anger. How dare you? She hissed, waving her phone. Do you know what you've done? I was building something important. I stood up, putting myself between her and Oliver. Building what? A brand? A following? At my son's expense. I was raising awareness, she shot back. People were praying for him. No, I said calmly, they were buying your merchandise. While you were filming at home, I was here, holding his hand. That's the difference between real family and social media family. Amanda's face crumpled, but I noticed her hand twitch toward her phone. Probably to record this moment too. Don't, I warned. This isn't content, Amanda. This is my son's life. Oliver's monitor beeped softly behind us. For the first time, Amanda actually looked at him, not as a prop, but as a sick child. She started, but for once she had no words. The nurse cleared her throat. Oliver needs rest. If you have family drama, take it outside. Family drama. Was that what this was? No. It was about protecting my son from being used as a spectacle. Amanda turned and left, shoulders slumped in a way I had never seen before. I exhaled, turning back to Oliver. He had watched everything. Mom, he whispered. I'm glad you're my real family. I hugged him gently. Sometimes children say the simplest truths. Then another message from my mother-in-law. But this time, it was different. We need to talk. All of us. About what real family means. I looked at Oliver, peacefully drifting to sleep, and typed back one word. Yes. A week after Oliver left the hospital, we had a family meeting in our living room. Mark, Diana, Amanda, and I sat together, while Oliver rested upstairs with Emma. Grandpa Jim, the only one who had actually helped during Oliver's hospital stay, stayed with them. Diana spoke first. We need to talk about what happened at the hospital. Amanda jumped in. Yes, Sophie completely overreacted and ruined. Stop, Diana said sharply, making everyone go quiet. Amanda, for once, you're going to listen. I sat up straighter. Something was different about Diana. I saw the visitor logs, she continued. I saw your posts, the times you were actually there, and her voice shook a little. I saw the merchandise sales. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. Her phone lay face down beside her, a rare sight. You were making money from your nephew's illness, Diana said, her voice heavy with disappointment. While Sophie was living every mother's nightmare, you were building a brand. Mom, I was trying to help. Amanda protested. The awareness, the prayers. The money? Mark cut in. The followers? Tell me, Amanda, how much did you make from those #prayers for Oliver t-shirts? Amanda's face turned red. She didn't answer. I did something too, Diana said. She pulled out her iPad and opened Facebook. There was a new post. An apology to my daughter-in-law. I was wrong. While Sophie was being the mother Oliver needed, I was blindly supporting a social media campaign that took advantage of his illness. True family isn't about likes and shares. It's about showing up. Sophie showed up. I didn't. I'm sorry. Tears filled my eyes. Diana reached for my hand. I've always been proud of Amanda's marketing skills, she admitted. But I forgot the difference between marketing and manipulation, between appearance and reality. Amanda stood suddenly. This isn't fair. I was just. Just what? I asked, my voice calm. Just using my son's illness for followers, just selling shirts with his name while he struggled to breathe. Tell me, Amanda, what were you just doing? For the first time, she seemed to understand. She sat back down, her confidence fading. I didn't think about it that way, she whispered. That's the problem, Mark said. You didn't think about Oliver at all. Just how his story could help you. A small sound from the doorway made us all turn. Oliver stood there in his pajamas, his inhaler in his hand. Grandpa Jim stood behind him, a hand on his shoulder. Aunt Amanda. Oliver's voice was small but steady. My friend Tommy at school saw your videos. He asked if you made money from me being sick. I didn't know what to say. Amanda's face crumpled. This time she wasn't crying for the camera. Oliver, I'm so sorry, she choked out. I was wrong. So wrong. Oliver walked over and hugged her. It's okay. But maybe next time you can just be my aunt. Without the camera. Amanda nodded, holding him tight. Over his shoulder, she looked at me, her eyes full of real regret. I'll delete everything, she said. The posts, the merchandise site, all of it. And she hesitated. I'll donate the money to the hospital's pediatric asthma program. It was a start. That night, after everyone left and the kids were asleep, Mark and I sat on our porch swing, the same place where Amanda had once staged her worried aunt photo shoot. Think anything will change? I asked. Mark squeezed my hand. Mom's already different. And Amanda, well, she hasn't posted in hours, which might be a record. I laughed softly, then I grew serious. I just want Oliver to know what real family means. He does, Mark said. Because you show him every day. My phone buzzed. A text from Diana. Lunch tomorrow? Just us, no phones allowed. I smiled and typed back. I'd like that. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show what really matters. And sometimes love isn't found in perfect, filtered moments, but in the messy, unedited reality of real family. Upstairs, Oliver's breathing monitor beeped softly, but this time the sound didn't fill me with fear. It reminded me that we had gotten through this together. As a real family, you never deserve our son, my mother-in-law said coldly, dangling the new house keys in front of me. It's time you understand your place in this family. I stood there silently as she finished changing the locks on the house I had lived in for 7 years. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 35, I was watching my in-laws kick me out of my own home. The situation would have been almost funny if it weren't so frustrating. Nothing to say. My father-in-law mocked. No tears. No begging. I thought you put up more of a fight. I adjusted my bag and smiled. No need. Maybe you're right. I never deserved your son. The confusion on their faces almost made up for the humiliation of this moment. Almost. From the day I married David, they made it clear I wasn't good enough. I was just a middle-class girl who had somehow married into their wealthy family. They never let me forget it. Not at family dinners, not during holidays, and certainly not during the many family meetings where they criticized me as a wife. Well, my mother-in-law huffed, disappointed by my lack of resistance. At least you finally understand. David will be better off with Madison anyway. She comes from the right kind of family. Ah, Madison. The family friend who had been hanging around David for the past year. The same Madison who had secret lunch meetings with him, sent late-night texts, and slowly crept into my marriage. The perfect woman for their perfect son. Everything they thought I wasn't. As I turned to leave, my mother-in-law's voice stopped me. Don't think about claiming anything. David was smart enough not to put your name on any property or accounts. You'll leave with nothing, just like you deserve. I nodded and walked away as they celebrated their victory. What they didn't know, what David didn't know, was that I had seen this coming long before they did. 2 years into our marriage, when David had a bad car accident, he trusted me to handle all the paperwork. You're better at this stuff anyway, he had said, signing whatever I put in front of him. So I did exactly that. I handled everything, including transferring the house into my name. Not out of greed, but because I knew what his parents were capable of. I loved David, but I wasn't naive. I protected myself. Now, as I walked away from the house I legally owned, I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. Julia, it happened just like we expected. Yes, they changed the locks. No, I didn't tell them about the deed. Let's move forward. I checked into the Four Seasons. Might as well be comfortable while the storm brewed. Julia had advised me to document everything. My in-laws' emotional abuse, David's affair with Madison, the messages, the bank records. Your in-laws will regret this, Julia had said. And David, well, he made his choice. I'd ordered room service and opened my laptop, checking the security cameras I had installed in the house months ago. The live feed showed my in-laws settling in, probably planning how to redecorate now that I was gone. A text popped up from David. Mom said you finally left. It's better this way. Madison and I can be together now. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Julia to add to our case file. 3 days. That's how long Julia said it would take to finalize everything. 3 days before they realized their mistake. Sipping my wine, I watched the sunset from my hotel room. Soon, David and his parents would learn the truth. The house, the cars, even his boat. They were all mine. Legal, documented, and untouchable. My grandmother always said, I murmured, raising my glass. The best revenge is letting people think they've won. I smiled. In 3 days, they would understand why I hadn't fought back. I had already won. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Letting go of a life where I was never accepted felt freeing. Tomorrow would be chaos. But tonight, I could finally breathe. 3 days passed quickly. Through my security cameras, I watched my in-laws and Madison turn my house into their dream home. They replaced my photos, moved my things to the garage, and acted like I never existed. On the 4th morning, I got dressed in my favorite black dress, styled my hair, and headed to meet Julia at the courthouse. It was time. Everything's ready, Julia said, handing me a stack of papers. The police will meet us there. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? I nodded. They humiliated me in front of everyone. It's only fair they learn their lesson the same way. We arrived just as David's car pulled into the driveway. Right on time. 2 police cars and a locksmith van followed. David stepped out with Madison beside him, his confident smile fading as he saw us. What's this? He asked. Sarah, if you're trying to make a scene. Julia stepped forward. We're here with a court order. This property belongs solely to Mrs. Mitchell. You and your family are trespassing. David laughed, but there was doubt in his eyes. That's ridiculous. This is my house. I bought it. With my money, I said. And you signed it over to me while you were recovering. Remember those papers you didn't bother to read? His face went pale just as his parents came outside. What's going on? My mother-in-law demanded. A police officer held out the official documents. Ma'am, you're trespassing. You have 1 hour to gather your things and leave. This is absurd, my father-in-law yelled. David, tell them this is your house. David frantically scrolled through his phone, searching for proof. This can't be right. Sarah, what did you do? I protected myself, I said simply. Just like you tried to protect yourself by keeping my name off everything. But you didn't read the fine print. You signed everything over to me. Madison grabbed David's arm. Baby, they can't do this. Tell them they can't do this. The officer checked his watch. 53 minutes left. My mother-in-law lunged at me, face twisted with rage. Careful, Julia warned. Everything is being recorded. You've already committed illegal entry. Want to add assault to the list? The next hour was chaos. My in-laws scrambled to grab whatever they could while the police watched. I stood by my car, calm, as their perfect plan collapsed. The cars too, Julia said as David tried to get into his BMW. The boat, the vehicles, everything is in Mrs. Mitchell's name. You can't take everything, he shouted. I earned that money. I opened a folder. Here are bank statements showing how you've been draining our accounts for your secret life with Madison. And here's proof of the money your parents tried to transfer out last week. Should I keep going? Their faces showed pure defeat. Madison was already calling in Uber, suddenly uninterested now that David had nothing. As they loaded their last belongings into my father-in-law's car, the only one in their name, David turned to me. Why? He asked, his voice hollow. Why did he just tell me you knew? I looked at him for the first time in months. Because you didn't deserve a warning. You and your family spent years making me feel small, like I wasn't enough. You never thought I was smart enough to protect myself. That was your mistake. The locksmith finished changing the locks, ones only I have the keys to. Julia handed David an envelope. Divorce papers, she said. Mrs. Mitchell is filing on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. You'll need a good lawyer. I watched them drive away, my mother-in-law crying, my father-in-law furious, David defeated, Madison disappearing. It felt like a weight had lifted. Julia shut her briefcase. That went better than expected, ready to go inside. I looked at my house, truly mine now, and smiled. Actually, I have one more stop to make first. The day wasn't over yet. I had one last surprise, one that would show them losing the house was just the beginning of their problems. That evening, while David and his family were probably scrambling to find hotel rooms, I sat in the office of James Parker, my mother's old friend and the executor of her estate. The same estate my in-laws never knew existed. The timing couldn't be better, James said, spreading documents across his desk. Your mother would be proud of how you handled everything. What my husband and his family never bothered to learn about me was that my middle-class background was a choice, not a reality. My mother had been a silent investor in multiple real estate developments, leaving me a substantial inheritance when she passed. I kept it quiet, living modestly, wanting to build a genuine relationship with David. The trust becomes active tomorrow, James continued. Now that you're filing for divorce, there's no reason to keep it separate anymore. The properties, investments, everything transfers to your control. I picked up my mother's old photo from his desk, smiling at her confident expression. She'd always warned me to keep something for myself, to maintain my independence no matter what. Never let anyone make you feel small, she'd said. Just let them think they're bigger than you until they prove they don't deserve your trust. My phone buzzed. A message from Julia. David's parents had tried to access their retirement accounts, only to discover their recent financial manipulations had triggered a fraud investigation. Their attempts to help David hide money from me during the divorce had backfired spectacularly. Should we proceed with the press release? James asked, holding up a draft announcement about the new charitable foundation I was establishing, one that would help women achieve financial independence after divorce. Yes, I nodded. It's time. The next morning, while having breakfast at my favorite cafe, I watched as the announcement hit the local news. The Mitchell Family Foundation, named after my mother, not my soon-to-be ex-husband, would be offering grants, legal assistance, and support to women rebuilding their lives. David's sister called first, surprisingly. I had no idea, she said quietly, about any of it, what they did to you, who you really were. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. Thank you, I replied sincerely. She'd been the only one who'd occasionally shown me kindness. Would you like to help with the foundation? We could use someone who understands family dynamics. By evening, the story had spread through our social circle. The same people who'd watched silently as my in-laws humiliated me, who turned a blind eye to Madison and David's affair, were suddenly flooding my phone with messages of support and congratulations. I declined all their calls except one, from my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd been the only person to warn me about Madison's frequent visits while I was away. You did good, girl, she said warmly. Your mother would be proud. A week later, I received a letter from David. He wrote about regret, about realizing too late what he'd lost, about hoping someday I could forgive him. Madison, he mentioned, had already started dating someone else. Someone with an actual fortune, not just the appearance of one. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on renovating my house, removing all traces of their presence. Each room I redesigned felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The foundation's first grant recipient was a woman who reminded me of myself, someone whose in-laws had tried to bully her out of her home. Helping her stand up for herself felt like turning my pain into purpose. 6 months later, I ran into my former mother-in-law at the grocery store. She looked older, tired. The fraud investigation had cost them their reputation and most of their retirement savings. She started to turn away but then stopped. You won, she said simply. You had the power all along and we never saw it. No, I corrected her. I didn't win. I just stopped letting you make me lose. As I drove home that evening, I thought about everything that had happened. My mother had taught me that true strength isn't about fighting every battle. It's about knowing which ones are worth fighting and being prepared when they come. I parked in my driveway, looking at my beautiful home, now truly mine in every way. The garden was blooming with the roses I'd planted, my favorite wind chimes tinkled in the breeze, and through the window, I could see the family photos I'd restored to their rightful place. Inside, on my desk, lay the final divorce papers ready to be filed. Beside them sat the foundation's latest grant applications, more women seeking the chance I'd had, the opportunity to stand on their own feet. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about building something beautiful from the ashes of what others tried to destroy. My in-laws had wanted to break me, but instead, they'd helped me build something stronger than I'd ever imagined. And that was worth more than any house or inheritance could ever be.